Hello, BookTube. This is it's a substitute video. Does that make any sense? I have gotten into a routine where I am publishing videos every Thursday and every Sunday, and that's gone on long enough now for me to think, well, you're going to be expecting something on Thursday night, and the problem is I'm not quite going to have something ready. I have almost completed the notes that I need for another Middlemarch meditations, but we're not quite there. And this will take us to the end of chapter 3, so I'm actually covering more pages than I normally would. Okay, so I hopefully will be ready to record that at the weekend. They take longer, of course, those videos too, to record and edit. So I could really use Saturday to get that done. But the reason I'm here is that I also promised you, didn't I, something about the Barbie movie. And it occurred to me that really, to solidify my opinion, I needed to go see the film again. So the Cineplex that you can see straight ahead is where I am going to see Barbie at 8:30. Just because I want to be sure of lines. You know, it's not possible for me to watch it online yet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to lower the camera now because real human beings are going to walk by soon, and I don't think I should really be capturing them on film. So we'll turn here where you can look at my beautiful steering wheel and the seat, the driver's seat of the car. One more topic, though. While we're here, I should engage with Marian H. Marian, you and we exchanged a pair of comments, didn't we? When you were talking about Pan's Labyrinth, one of your last videos, and we were talking about how graphic the violence was. You had, let me get it right, you've read the book and I've seen the film. I was going to do it the other way around. You've read the book and I've seen the film. And I should do an homage to you and put my hand in the picture. There we go. This is now a proper response to Marianne video because my hand is in the video. But Marianne, you were talking about the violence, and we sort of said, oh, maybe it'd be a cool thing to do a video together. Or, no, I don't think we agreed that it had to be together. We could do it separately. We're some distance apart, probably. But we were going to talk about violence in films and in books, and what was was graphic violence ever an issue? Did we have principles or rules about it, or should there be principles or rules about it? So I thought about that, Marian. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days, trying to come up with some handy list, because we all like lists and points, don't we, on BookTube? And I was thinking, right, I'm going to come up with the Heather Reed's definitive guide to, what constitutes too much graphic violence or gratuitous violence, I guess, if you want to use that word. And I started thinking of films I'd watched and books I'd read, trying to think of a good example of, violence that just did not need to be where it was. And of course, I couldn't use Pan's Labyrinth. I think I'd already said that. The funny thing was, at the time that I watched Pan's Labyrinth, thinking that I was going to see a children's film, that was a bit of a mistake, wasn't it? But at the time, I think I'd not long finished reading a book. Oh, look, I can get a reflection. Oh, I could do like hand puppets. There we go. I was reading an historian's book on the Spanish Civil War. So a nice dry bit of nonfiction, which was good, because the Spanish Civil War was an astoundingly violent and bloody and vicious conflict. And victory by Franco's side didn't ensure an end to all that fear and terror. It just went on. So the violence in Pan's Labyrinth, to my mind, it made sense. It truly spoke about how it was to live in Franco's Spain. It was very probably that terrifying. And there probably was that kind of unexpected, gruesome violence as people tried to settle scores or do what was right, if that's what they felt they were doing. And in civil wars, both sides tend to think they're doing the right thing, don't they? Or any war. Come to that. So I racked my brains, Marian, but I couldn't come up with anything. Every example of violence that I thought of. I thought of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I mean, there's some horrendous sexual violence in that book. It's frightening. In fact, I couldn't watch the film. I could, not parts of it, I could not watch because they were so graphically depicted, and they just frightened me too much. Could not watch that. Can't watch most things that are frightening on screen. Can cope a little bit better with books. But again, I don't know if I would say that with Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, there was a purpose to that violence. It was to show that such violence exists, that there are, I think the original title of the book in Danish was The Man Who Hated Women. That is, it was about the fact that there are crimes that are committed purely because some men hate women. And I just don't see how you can, you kind of have to have the violence, A, to show just how bad the problem is, but B, also, I believe Lisbeth Salander gets her revenge on one of the perpetrators toward the end of the book and the film. And that revenge is poignant precisely because of what she suffered. In fact, her revenge is based on the pain that she suffered. So, yeah, I just don't know how you can, and so there, I couldn't use that as an example either. I tried thinking of Schindler's List. I had a problem with Thomas Keneally's Schindler's List. I had to put it down at one point. I can describe the scene. I can remember it. It was the hospital in the Jewish ghetto in Krakow, and it was under siege, and Nazi troops broke in and they moved their way up floor by floor, killing everyone in the hospital. On the very top floor of the hospital, it was a palliative unit, so there were just a few patients, about a half a dozen left, and a few doctors and nurses attending them. And the doctors and nurses took a decision, as they could tell that the troops were moving up floor by floor, that they did not themselves want to die at the hands of these soldiers, and they didn't want their patients to die that way. They wanted their patients to agree to a death, so they spoke to all the patients, and everyone agreed, yes, we would rather take our own lives than have the soldiers take them for us. And so the medical staff got out of their drugs cabinet, whatever, enough potassium cyanide tablets for everyone in that ward to commit suicide. And at that point, I think I was just overwhelmed by the horror of it, the horror of having to deliberately kill some people. Well, okay, they had asked to die, but that doesn't make it any better. That doesn't help. And I was just overwhelmed by the horror of it all, and I had to put the book down. And I can remember that for 2 weeks, I just could not touch that book to finish it. And I thought I might never be able to finish it. I was so overwhelmed. I was even frightened of the physical presence of the book on my bedside table. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But eventually I did go back to reading it because I kept thinking to myself, well, if this is based on true events, and I had been made to understand, that it was, then if these people lived through this, what was it asking so much for me to read it? Was it asking so much? And I thought, no, it's not. You can read it. It's nothing like going through it. It's absolutely not even approachable. So come on, So I did. So I picked up the book, finished reading it, including the horrificness of it. And yeah, that was it. But again, if you said, well, surely that violence, I thought, no, you have to talk about it. Even though it is as awful as it is, has to be talked about, and yes, maybe has to be described, because there will be generations who never experience this and they never know. And I think unless you tell them exactly how bad it is, they might assume something less awful, and that would be wrong. So that's really all I have to say, Marian. I'm so sorry. I was hoping that I could come up with a video with a list of points, and then you could counter and say, well, I don't know about that point. I don't quite agree with that one. This is how I would look at it. I was hoping I could give you something. I am a coward. I admit that most things that are frightening frighten me. And I do sometimes have to be very careful when I'm going to watch or read about something frightening. But I've never read violence or even watched violence where I have felt, no, This simply did not need to be here. Even in films where, well, for example, recently we went to see Mission Impossible, the newest film. Well, there's loads of violence in that. Not to mention the number of things that get broken and blown up. But yes, it's not essential. It's not telling me about a historical event. That's true. But the nature of the film announces itself. As you get to know film and genre, you know that film X is going to have lots of action. You can tell by the graphics on the poster. You can tell by 10 seconds of the trailer, can't you? So you know that what the film is doing. And I just think it is being the kind of film that it is, and announcing the kind of film that it is. And I don't know if it's gratuitous if you go to it anyway, somehow hoping that it won't be what it quite clearly says it is, which is my fault with Pan's Labyrinth, because I should have twigged from the posters and the graphics that if this is a children's movie, it's probably one of the strangest in terms of how it was advertised. So see, I should have really twigged. Pan's Labyrinth. Why do those posters for the movie look a little bit sinister? I should have twigged, but I didn't. Okay. Nevertheless, I still thought it was a splendid movie, in spite the violence, which, yes, terrified me. There were moments I just had to sharply look away from the screen because I could not deal with what I could see was coming. And I guess that's just me. Whereas my person who watches television in my home, that person can watch no end of dark things. Oh my goodness. That person loved Mo Hader's Birdman. Now, I've heard about Birdman, and I'm not sure I could read it, never mind watch a film adaptation. But person who watches the television, it doesn't affect him. Doesn't have that effect. So I don't know what to say about violence, because so much of my reaction is personal and subjective. It's my reaction. I don't necessarily think the violence of and by itself is bad. It's just that my reaction to it is very strong, and that's fine. It always will mean that I will be choosing how, when, or even if I digest something that has violence. It really just depends whether I'm ready and can cope with it. And so I guess that's going to be my rule of thumb. It's not, is there ever violence that I think is absolutely unnecessary in films and books? I guess I'd say no. I don't think there is. But I always have to make a choice myself, because I don't do well with violence. I have to make a choice about whether or not I watch something, and if I'm going to watch it when, and do I need someone around, and does it need to be daytime, and do we need to see something cheerful after that, or whatever I have to do as a coping strategy. But I do need coping strategies, and that's perhaps what maybe I could put that question back to you, Marian. When you feel that there's something that you ought to read or watch, but you know it's going to be difficult, do you have to employ coping strategies, or would you just prefer not to go there altogether? How do you run your show? Not how do you run your show. I watch your videos. I see how that runs. But, how do you make your decisions about violence and reading about or watching violent material? I think that's all I can think of for now, everyone. Look, thanks for eavesdropping on the little conversation between me and Marian. If you have any thoughts and you want to put them in the comments, do. Or if you want to make a video about what violence in books and or films, how it affects you, whether you ever feel that there's a principle that applies, that you use to judge whether or not a book or a film has too much violence or has gratuitous violence. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear it. This is not a tag so much as a, hey, everybody, if you want to join in the conversation and say something, please do. Okay, everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much for listening. Hang in there till the weekend, and I will have some proper booktube material for you. All right. Thanks very much, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.